Haiti is located in the Caribbean and occupies one-third of the island of Hispaniola with the Dominican Republic. Its relative size is a little smaller than the state of Maryland. It is the 19th poorest nation in the world and the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. The population is a little under 10 million people. It has an unemployment rate of 90%. Two-thirds of the labor force do not have formal jobs. Translated with the unemployment rate, that means that only about 3% of the working people in the country have what would be considered a job in the United States. 80% of the people live below the poverty level. Almost 50% of the population is illiterate, and 60% of those attending school drop out during somewhere in the elementary education. Agriculture consists of small individual subsistence farming. There is no running water in the villages outside the city, and almost all the water is unpotable. The sewage is non-existent, and there is no sewage at all in the villages. Electricity is only available in the cities, and that's unreliable. So once you get out of the city, there's no running water, no electricity, no sewage, and very little education. The mission to restore Haiti has three major objectives. One is to raise funds for supplies and textbooks, to raise the quality of education, and at the same time provide at least one nutritious meal per child per day. In January of this year, we started our first courses at the North Haiti Bible Institute. Pastor Ehrlich, shown on the left here, writes all the courses. These courses are available free of charge to the pastors and leaders in each of the four churches. Our hopes are that they will pass this on and be teachers to others. When the people at this church realized that Melissa had some medical training, the crowd quickly grew as the sick ladies and the sick children were brought for help. Medical need here is immediate. In the end, all we could really do, as we had no supplies with us, was just pray for these people. This elderly lady sitting and this little girl both have growths in their stomach. So we prayed with them. This is the church school in the city of Cap-Haïtien. For a church to survive in Haiti, they must have their own church school. Pastor Andre has qualified teachers operating at each of the church schools which are government accredited. The schools are in Ubia, Dubry, La Balimbe, and Cap-Haïtien. There are over 1,500 children between the four schools. You can support a child for $30 a month, which would provide a nutritious meal 5 days a week, plus provide them with the supplies they need to better their education. Now we move out of the city to the village churches. This is the church school in Dubry. Notice how that teacher had to share the chalk. They have so few supplies. These churches in the countryside are so poor. You can notice from these pictures that one wall of the building is missing and they only have half a roof. A typical school day for these children starts at 8 in the morning and ends at 2 in the afternoon. We are so burdened to supply these children with a school lunch program. 90% of these kids or more probably had no breakfast. The school currently is unable to feed them a lunch. And when they get home later today, their one meal will be whatever their parents could find that day. The third church we visited was in Obia. Definitely the smallest church. They don't own the building or the land, and the pastor's house next door is rented also. But they did want to put on a show for us. And you got to admit, these little ones, no matter what country they're in, they're always the same. The last church we visited was in Balimbe. This church was founded some 17 years ago by Pastor Andre and is the oldest of the four churches. And you'll notice because of that how the school is more developed and has several different age groups. Because there are no supplies or textbooks, the teaching method in Haiti is very different from that used in the United States. Almost everything is taught by memorization and rote by what the teacher writes on the board. Learning by rote is a very outdated means of education. In these four schools, we have the qualified teachers in place, but until they can get supplies and modern textbooks written in Creole, this is what they'll be limited to, just learning by rote and doing the best they can. These children are the hope of Haiti. It's mandatory that we provide a better education. The man pictured here is Felix. He's the headmaster of the church in Balimbe. I included this bit of video because I wanted you to see just how frustrated the teachers are here. They teach 6 hours a day with no materials and no textbooks. These church schools are funded by tuition, but probably 3/4 of the children don't pay tuition at all. And the 1/4 that does pay, they pay on a haphazard basis. A good month, the teachers in the school may receive $100 that month to split between the 6 or 8 teachers. Basically, these people are working for free. They teach 6 hours a day for free. Whenever Felix asks the parents of the children for their tuition, many times they just take their children and they quit school. But Felix wasn't talking about the lack of supplies, the lack of textbooks, the lack of pay. What he was concerned about here was those 30 or 40 students that in the last year had been taken out of his school. He was pleading with us, help me, what can I do to keep these children in school? I foresee little change in Haiti until the coming generations are properly educated. These will be the leader of the country, and how do you train leaders with no supplies and no textbooks? Another one of the Christian mission to restore Haiti's outreaches is the North Haiti Bible Institute. Pastor Ehrlich writes all the courses himself, and these are distributed freely. All the courses are planned for individual study, and we plan to return at least 3 times a year to give out the next set of courses. The students for the first courses were selected by the pastor, 4 pastors, They chose 3 people each out, 3 of the leaders out of their church to participate. So the first class started with 16 people. Besides the individual study, each church holds once a week a group study, and once a month there's a group study in Cap-Haitian where all the teachers and pastors from the 4 churches get together to study the material. The courses consist of a 2-year beginner's course, a 4-year intermediate, and a 6-year intensive study course. Those who complete the 6-year study will be more than prepared to pastor a church. You can tell by the video how serious these people take these courses. These people are committed. Many of these people had to get up at 4 in the morning to attend this seminar, and they probably won't get home until 8 or 9 o'clock that evening. Travel in Haiti, if you do not own your own vehicle, is very difficult and time-consuming. Our long-term goal in this ministry is that the pastors you see here today will be taking over the teaching of the Institute in the future, and that they'll be the pastors that are going out in the country and building new churches. And the only role CMRH will have to play in the Institute will be to provide them the materials to continue on. We look forward to the day when our role in the Institute will be only occasional assistance and to provide the printed materials needed to carry on the work of training Haitian pastors. Medical aid, though available, is unattainable to 90% of the population due to the cost. Due to the poor diet, the dirty water, the lack of sanitation, and the lack of education, HIV/AIDS, diarrhea, urinary infections, intestinal infections, respiratory infections including TB, malaria, typhoid, and hepatitis are the common diseases and usually cause death. The little girl you see here with the distended belly, we paid to have her sent to one of the clinics. The clinics are manned by nurses who can only treat the most simple ailments. The clinic's advice was to see a doctor, and they sent her home. On February 24th of this year, we contacted a doctor, and he requires $500 in advance before he will even see the girl. If she has further complications, such as surgery or medicine, that cost will rise. If she is not treated, she will probably be dead before we return in July. The little guy on the left is one of Pastor Andre's relatives. He has a hernia about the size of the golf ball and requires surgery. Melissa, you can see her sitting down back here, putting her first aid packages together. She spent over $300 of her own money in the pharmacies trying to get something together to help that little girl, that little baby that had the sore on the side of its head. She is now recovering. Melissa and Pastor Andre had to show the pastor from Degree how to use the gauze to wrap a head wound. They lack the most basic hygiene principles. Trying to make contact with other organizations, but they're all just stretched to the limit. Nobody has more to give. We need our own doctors and nurses who are willing to make the trip with us.